This isn't just Kilmar's story. It's a warning. When the government can kidnap a legal resident with no hearing and no appeal, and face no consequence, it means the rule of law has been replaced with something else. It means no one is safe. Immigrants are the testing ground. If we stay silent now, they will expand these powers until none of us are beyond their reach. Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry I was gone for so long. I was on a 5-month doom scrolling binge. It happens to the best of us. We need to talk about what is currently happening to Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, and why it matters to you and the people around you, no matter who you are. The quote from the beginning of this video was taken directly from the GoFundMe page for Abrego Garcia, a man who was illegally deported to El Salvador in March of 2025. We are watching firsthand the current administration try and overstep the judicial branch, and thus marks danger for anyone with anything to say that goes against what the current administration is pushing. Linked below is the GoFundMe for Abrego Garcia, and here are all the different things that they are currently trying to fund with this $10,000 goal. This includes financial relief for a bond that could potentially come with the release of Garcia. It also comes with providing relief for his wife and nonverbal son. Today, we're gonna go through the Supreme Court ruling of Noam v. Abrego Garcia and see what exactly it's actually trying to tell us by analyzing what these Supreme Court justices are concluding from the entire debacle. And it's honestly insane once you see the evidence that's presented by the Trump administration and the reasonings on why he was deported and why he can't be brought back. It's pretty, not only is it absurd, it's inappropriate, and most of all, it's a warning for what could essentially happen to anyone, citizen or not. On March 15th, 2025, Abrego Garcia was deported by the Trump administration. He was sent to a prison for terrorists in El Salvador. This was under the guise that he was not only an illegal immigrant, but a gang member from a group called MS-13. Except there are no ties to MS-13 that have been conclusively found for Abrego. And he is here legally. In fact, he was granted something called a withholding of removal. As in 2019, a judge ruled that he was under clear probability of future persecution, and thus, while still capable of being deported, it was legally protected that he was not to be sent back to El Salvador. And the only reason he didn't qualify for asylum is because at 16, he came to the US illegally to live with his brother, who was a US citizen, to escape that same persecution. Once again, Abrego also has no criminal record. Now, what makes this situation extremely alarming and vile and distasteful are the current actions that the administration is taking to prevent the safe return of Abrego Garcia. Now, if you haven't seen the photo of Trump holding the photo that is supposedly his MS-13 tattoos on Abrego Garcia's hand, just prepare yourself, prepared to be shocked. It's pretty egregious. Yes, you are looking at the letters MS-13 pasted on a Word document, supposedly supposed to be tattoos. They didn't even bother photoshopping. This is Calibri, babe. This is a type font. It's not even Photoshop. They didn't even hire someone, your elite CIA. Stacy from Filing made this. So not only are they willing to Photoshop, and obviously at that, photos of an innocent man to make him look guilty, they're willing to do that shit half-assed in a Word document. In fact, Trump didn't even seem to realize, or possibly purposely ignored the fact that these were obviously fabricated, and was a little stumped when it was brought up in an interview.
They looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute.
Well, wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshop. So let me
That was Photoshop. Terry, you can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. He had MS-13 tattooed.
Right, we'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture.
And you think it was Photoshop?
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine, sir.
Terry,
I want to get to Ukraine.
No. He had MS, as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news, because
when
it's
he was
fake
photographed
news.
in El Salvador, they aren't there.
Harry.
Ukraine, sir.
He's got MS-13 on his knuckles.
All right.
Okay?
Well, we'll take a look at that.
It's you do
We'll take a
such a
look at that.
disservice.
We'll take a look at
Why
that,
don't you
sir.
just say, yes, he does, and, go on to something
All right,
else?
it's contested. Ukraine.
The next attempt to leave Abrego Garcia in El Salvador was the US government essentially saying, "We've already sent him there, we can't get him back, it's just too hard." The Supreme Court, however, calls on two cases that seemingly discredit this comment, that being Rumsfeld v. Padilla and Boumediene v. Bush. After the 9/11 attacks, Jose Padilla was issued a material witness warrant. However, President Bush reclassified Padilla as an enemy combatant, thus leading to his imprisonment. Now, Padilla's representative challenged this notion and essentially said that his right to habeas corpus had been violated. Now, habeas corpus is your right to challenge in court your confinement if they have violated your constitutional rights. While the case was thrown out due to a technicality with how it was filed, this court case emphasized the ability to still challenge and apply habeas corpus, and thus supports Abrego Garcia's challenge for a wrongful deportation, and argues for his rightful return. I mispronounced Lakhdar Boumedienne's name multiple times in this section, so I'm just going to re-record it over it. He was an innocent man, a humanitarian aid worker in Algeria, so it's the least I can do to respect him. Boumediene v. Bush was another habeas corpus case, where Lakhdar Boumedienne was being held in Guantanamo Bay. Now, the United States used Guantanamo Bay to essentially commit human rights violations, specifically because technically it's not part of the US, which means United States constitutional rights seemingly didn't apply there. However, this case shined a light on what was happening in Guantanamo Bay, and this was later seen as unconstitutional. And because of the United States' involvement in Guantanamo Bay, your constitutional rights still applied there. This, of course, ties back to Abrego Garcia's situation, where the US essentially facilitated the entire deportation of this man, and thus they are responsible for ensuring that his constitutional rights were being upheld within that deportation process, and we both know it was not. These two cases show that if the US is involved in your confinement, then you still get habeas corpus. You are still able to challenge your wrongful confinement, and your constitutional rights are still valid. The most concerning and frightening aspect of this Supreme Court case is what Supreme Justice Sotomayor says in regards to the argument that the Trump administration presents. The government's argument, moreover, implies that it could deport and incarcerate any person, including US citizens, without legal consequence, as long as it does so before a court can intervene, essentially implying that checks and balances are not needed if you are fast enough. With this rush of ICE deportations, due process, or your right to proper and fair legal treatment from the government, is being ignored on a mass scale. Immigrants are not the only target on this crackdown by the Trump administration. In fact, the attempt to abuse habeas corpus and due process has been attempted by this regime against anyone who even thinks of critiquing the current administration, whether that be Palestinian and ICE protesters, including those who are left-leaning or queer, specifically him citing that he wants to start deporting and denaturalizing US citizens. It should also be mentioned that Abrego Garcia is not the only one dealing with this specific type of injustice at this moment. We have multiple instances of the deportation of legal US citizens, queer asylum seekers from hate crimes, and a lack of due process for legal children in immigrant households who have been raided. And of course, the new emphasis on denaturalization. This is why it is absolutely necessary that we all speak up in the ways that work, with your voice, with your body, or with your pockets. This can be seen as donating to funds and groups like Abrego Garcia's GoFundMe, which specifically puts those with the tools to intervene. It gives them the ability to do so by funding them. Think of pro bono or free immigration lawyers or advocacy groups. Give those with the tools and knowledge to perform the ability to perform. While protesting publicly may look ineffective, it's extremely good for networking opportunities if you're looking for somewhere to volunteer or places to help out or do what you can. It also shows widespread solidarity and support for targeted peoples. And just for me personally, protest shows me that outside of a computer screen, there are people who care, and people who are just as angry and furious and upset, and it honestly fuels me to keep going some days. It's also a great place to make friends, just saying. And of course, talk to the people around you, your friends, your family. Something as simple as an Instagram post on your story can keep the conversation in the forefront. Off topic, but this is why I kind of hate the term like armchair activist. Not everyone is ready to hit the ground running, and you have no idea just how influential something can be just by posting it on your story. You don't know how it's impacting the people who are seeing it, and essentially giving yourself a higher level of accountability and showing other people around you that you are willing to stand up at that level compared to not doing anything at all. At the end of the day, not everyone is going to be on the front lines. So do what you can, with what you can, and how you can. While the treatment Abrego Garcia is receiving itself is enough for public outrage, the implications of his mistreatment is applicable to everyone. He was here legally. They are willing to lie to avoid responsibility. They are attempting to avoid checks and balances. You are no different. Thanks for watching.